on this computer, and we'll post this up on the channel. All right, so it looks like recording started. We're going to talk about HTML syntax. All right, guys, remember we can answer some questions, and I'll answer them as best I can. But as we're going through this, sometimes I may not necessarily see it right away, maybe a delay. So topics today, we want to talk about HTML syntax, path and links. So I already helped somebody today with this exact issue for paths and links. You may, and when we're dealing with path and links, it can be anything from a style sheet to a file to an image, and there's some various issues that may not be apparent right away why things aren't working, because the browser won't exactly tell you what's going on. We'll walk through some forms. Really HTML, aside from a beautiful design page, which really the beauty comes from CSS, like we said already, we established its markup. Really, aside from linking to other documents, which is important because you need to link around so you don't have a 1,000, 2,000 line page. Not only that, we need to capture input from the user. That is the heart of any web application. You need to know you need to know something about that user, right? That whether it be a shopping cart, whether it be some kind of registration form, whether it be banking information, what have you, right? I'm sure through your experience using your mobile phones and things like that, you know exactly what I'm talking about. And if you don't, then that's what we're here to learn. So keep an open mind. Global attributes. So, we really haven't talked about global attributes, and we will. Just know that on every single element, there is an attribute. And as HTML grows, more attributes power up the elements. Because right now, we've only really looked at basic elements, but there's a lot more to them. And then, we really haven't touched on HTML5. We've kind of talked about various tags. Even, there's so many tags in my head because I've gone through 20 years of HTML. It's hard to really remember if they're older tags or they're newer tags. Header tag, in fact, somebody asked me about. I forgot, it's actually new. So the syntax. Again, we'll recap the tree structure, which is very important. We got to think about these elements as a tree. There is a concept that we will get into when we really start about talking about JavaScript, and it's called the DOM, D-O-M, Document Object Model. And when we talk about that model, we really start visualizing this tree again, and we need that model. And not only that, when we start talking about Angular, React, Vue, things like that, they have their own way of handling this tree, which it gets very interesting. Actually, it's very, very innovative, and it's very high performance, right? And you can just imagine, how much, just as a food for thought, I guess. Can you imagine 1,000 level tree here, and imagine how much work it is for the browser to redraw everything on a page refresh, which old browsers and old technology used to do. So you can imagine that how slow that would be to re-render everything. So the newer frameworks kind of solve this. They solve this. Not to get too technical right now, but there's various techniques on how to increase that performance. So, but we need to keep in mind it's a tree. So the definition, I'll just read it. Each HTML document can be actually referred to as a document tree. We can also think of it as a model. We describe the elements in a tree like we would describe a family tree. Ancestors, descendants, parents, children, siblings. Also important to understand the document tree because the CSS selectors use the tree. So right, when we get into CSS, it's all about ancestors. It's all about selecting elements at various levels. All these concepts I just talked about, CSS started flooding back in my brain. All different ways to select. Not only that, I mentioned jQuery, which is kind of an older school technology library right now, but they are all about selectors, right? And they do it really well, and you know, it's still around. One time jQuery, to be a jQuery developer, that was like a really in-demand thing. I even went to like a workshop myself. I remember trying to learn jQuery, but now, you know, it's very simple compared to what's out there now. So anyhow, that's a concept to recap from last session. Again, the document recap, metadata, right? We already kind of talked about that, contains information about the page, includes styles, scripts, data to help software engines, search engines like browsers render the page. So when we talk about styles, we talk about cascading style sheets. When we talk about scripts, we may assume that it may be JavaScript, but it can be many other types of scripts that could be used there, depending on what you're using. But most likely JavaScript. Data as well as other information to help those browsers render, because they all have engines, and we remember that browsers can have legacy browsers, which the rendering engines are very old, and they have a hard time. They'll have a hard time with the new tags, especially like a media tag playing a video. Like it won't know what to do with that. You'll just see a broken screen. But more on that later. So base tag, the base element specifies the base URL of all relevant URLs in the document. Again, we may be looking more at some newer tags. I haven't used base that much, to be honest. Head tag, obviously, we already mentioned what the head tag is. That's the machine readable information, the metadata about the document. Title, we need a title. The browser needs a title. I mean, if you don't have a title, it's not gonna like, you know, not load the page, but it's gonna kind of default it against scripts, style sheets, right? Everything you need in that section. Links, very important. A way of linking, right? When we talked about the origin of HTML and all it was scientific documents and how to link it together. That was the idea, the genesis of it. They didn't think, it wasn't built. HTML wasn't built. It wasn't built to do what we needed it to do right now. It was kind of adopted. It was just in the right place at the right time, and we really, you know, took a round peg and hammered it into a square hole kind of thing, right? We just made it work, and we had to add a whole bunch of utilities and stuff like that to make it into some type of interface that we could use, that we intuitively can understand as a user. So we need those links for relationships between documents, and not only that. Don't think of this as a hyperlink. It's a link to the external element. So we're going to be using these links for the style sheets, for site icons, favorite icons, icons on the home screen, all of that stuff, right, that we may need. Metadata, right, we already talked about. Title, scripts, base, link, title. Styles, you can do inline styling inside of that tag, or it's best not to, and we'll get into that again with style sheets. You could dump all your styles inside of the style tag. You could dump all your script inside of the script tag, but then it becomes very unmaintainable, because you can grow and grow and grow. You want to organize your house, organize your project in a very straightforward way. So, you know, if you have a admin section, you're going to have styles for admin, or you're going to have scripts for admin. And then within that, you may be breaking it down. Maybe you have styles per component, right? Maybe you have like some kind of widget that maybe does, I don't know, it's like a banking credit card information thing, right? You have styles sheets just for that. You have scripts just for that. So that when you're debugging, you know exactly where to go. You know exactly what to look for. And then when you search code in a large code base, you know exactly where to go. So on that note, why don't we look at Netflix? Not watch movies, but let's see what a site like this looks like. If we click on our tools and we go to developer tools, let's take a look at what they do. I know for sure they use React, because I looked at this before, but let's see what they got in their header tag. All right, so they got, as you can see, a bunch of information here. They got, they're telling us that the content is best delivered on text HTML, character set UDF-8, and then they're setting the character set, being really explicit. They have some other metadata things. So this is compatible with IE Edge. So they're basically adding some information. I told you about other browsers. So they're basically saying, you know, you can target IE Edge as well. And then you have to look up what this tag may mean. It may mean something special. Origin trail. Remember, some of the stuff is for search engines. Search engines need to crawl and their ranking needs to be good, right? So what does this say? This says policy check. So they got some type of check in there and some content. I don't know what that means, right? As we can see right there, oh, Netflix Canada. So already, because I'm in Canada, I probably only get half the content. If you don't know, there's a difference between US and Canada content. So I probably have like 30% less than US. Preloaded, I don't know what that is. So they're linking to some kind of scripts in there. We got a style sheet in there for some styles. Whole bunch of JavaScript. Let's see what that looks like. So this is doing something. I don't know. It's opening up some type of request. Oh, it's probably, to me, it looks like it's fetching something to handle some kind of window resizing, make it responsive. So they did an inline script there. You can tell they did some type of function closure. We'll get into that. They didn't link to an external code base. So cross origin anonymous, so that's something to do with cross-site scripting, and more script here. So this is something floating around here, another function. Some more metadata. So now we're getting to the search engine. Content, watch movies, watch online. So if you're searching in Google for some of these keywords, it should, those spiders I talked about, you know, if you search TV shows online, Netflix should show up there pretty quick. Or some of these things here, other description. Viewport, what a viewport is those the different types of views I may have mentioned on devices, from tablet, iPhone to browser. You know, as I am changing my viewport here, here's mobile phone, here's tablet, here's desktop, right? You can see the buttons and the style changes, right? That's based on, see, between the difference of a couple pixels, you're getting a different experience, right? So that is just telling us that we have different viewports, and there's probably a whole bunch of style sheets. Here we are that handle all this stuff. And this is a style sheet, and on our links, we have these things called attributes. So type, rel, href, those are things called attributes on the element. So, and then here's a link right here to the shortcut icon. So that's probably like the little icon that sometimes shows up in the browser. A whole bunch of scripts. We don't need to really dig into that. There's a whole bunch of stuff going on. More metadata, bunch of stuff for iOS, I guess for App Store, Android, URL package, all these things. They use something with it, Twitter. And then a whole bunch of other scripts. And then we end our head tag. So this is a big site. There's a lot going on there. There's a lot going on in that head tag, right? And that's what we want to kind of go over what that is. I mean, then we get into the visual representation inside of our body tag. Inside our body tag, we got a whole bunch of stuff going on, right? In terms of layout and things like that. So yeah, that's what the metadata is. There's a lot going on. And that's what the browser looks at. So yes, this slide has a lot of information, but the code actually tells the story much better than this slide could, and much better than I can read it. But that's what all this does. All right, so tags, we're just reviewing that, that, you know, you need to create all elements, so on and so forth. We need content, and just remember we need to end the tags. All right, am I in the right thing here? Yes, I am. Right. So header tags, we may have mentioned that already. We need to have different ways in our website to really emphasize big words. There used to be a whole bunch of depreciated tags like font. I'm very sad to hear that font tag is now being depreciated. They also had tags like bold, which was just like a B, that's being depreciated from what I read. But we have other new tags like header tags that can, you know, automatically grow, increase the size from small to extra large to triple XL and all that. So we need these things that are called headers, not to be confused with some of the other header tags, but so main header tags and sub tags. So it's pretty common to see right here that we may have some web partner websites where we have two headers. We want to emphasize that farmers are people too. And then we want a smaller little kind of subheading. And then we want our regular text here, right? So just a way to quickly emphasize to the browser that's what it is. So we already did a little bit in our lab, but we have that header tag. So this is the header element. That represents the introductory content. So that's usually a group of so right at the top, it's going to really kind of broadcast that at the beginning and make it really big with elements. Not to be, actually similarly, if we were to look, and hopefully we will, at Bootstrap. Bootstrap is a CSS framework. They have something like, it's like a style, Teletron or something like that, or big, I forget exactly what it was, Bigtron or Titantron, something like that. But anyhow, when you wrap some words in that, it makes a big block, and the text is huge, and it really stands out, like with a blue banner behind it, and just with a couple lines of code, really.
Question, please.
Yes, go ahead.
So, yeah, what's the difference between the main tag and the body tag?
So you're saying for the header tag and the H1, the header tag here and this body tag here, or you're saying the header tag and the body?
No, so I said the main. So under the header tag, there's a main tag. Can you see that?
Yep. Let me just quickly do that. So let's go back to our.
No, on this page.
Yep. No, I got it. So main. Let's go and see. It's probably a newer tag. The main tag represents the dominant content of the body. So it's the dominant content of the body. Still, we need it, we may need it inside of the body tag, but like I said, there's so many new markups, you got to really play with them. I mean, every document's looking for that body tag, but they're saying that this is the main element represented in the content area. So we have a whole bunch of things of sectional tags and structural tags that are coming into play in HTML5. Could you use a header, a mix of main in place of your body tag? You could as you're writing it. The browser will probably figure out and try to wrap it. But it's just a way of doing it, basically saying it's dominant, the dominant content. But yeah, there's a whole bunch of structural stuff that's coming into play in HTML and HTML5.
One more question. How did you search for main right now on this page?
Pardon me?
How did you search for it now? Like,
how do you set it? Sorry, repeat the question.
I said, how did you search for the main tag now? Like you search for it and it showed you what it means. How did you do it again?
Okay, sorry. Yes.
Okay, just there. Yeah. Okay.
Yeah, and NPM, this is the web docs, right? I would recommend to you guys just, hey, I don't know what that tag looks like, so let's go to, let's look it up, right? And then you can even use like an angle bracket main, just because, there's so many and you need to find out what they are. Yes, we have pointed out depreciated is different than deprecated. Sure, whatever, it's not in use anymore. My mistake, you know what, I always use them. It sounds good. Just they're phasing it out. How about that? They're phasing out those tags. You gotta remember, Canada is closer to British, not North American. So we have a lot of slang and a lot of different things inside of there. So if you don't understand what I'm exactly looking for, maybe there's a British doc you can. You can look up. To be honest, I even talk with an accent apparently, and I say Canadian things. If you hear me say EH, that's a slang, and it's something I'm trying to drop. But you may hear me say that. All right. So yes, thank you for that. Any questions like that? Don't feel free to ask them. right? And we'll look together. So like I keep gonna put the links inside of the document because really we'll go over this here, but I don't memorize all this stuff. And you know, I write, but I need to always refer back. And I would say when you're developing, you always look at your docs. I'm guilty of it myself. Sometimes I just, even at work, I have to, I'm like, oh, I gotta look at the documentation, but it saves you a lot of time. So that's all I can tell you. So we'll always refer back if we have questions. So these other elements, not to be confused, but you will be confused because they are also header tags, heading tags, if you want to be specific. Sometimes when people ask me about header tags, I think of these tags because these tags have been around for, well, I want to say a long time, but I've used them for a while. So it could only have been like X number of years, but for me, it feels like they've been around forever. But again, it's a blur. All these, when you look at HTML so much, you know, sometimes you go on projects where the code base is older. Sometimes you go when it's newer, and it just all becomes a blur. And it's hard to differentiate. Sometimes you have old tags mixed with new tags. Same with code. There's versions of code, code bases, and always refer back when you can to documentation. And also know the version you're working in. It'll help you a lot. So elements, H1 to H6, different 6 levels of headings. So quickly, as we can see there, you know, just by using these tags, we are already kind of going down in the levels here. We're doing nesting here. So inside of level 3, we tried to put, well, that's not really a nesting, but we're playing around with the levels, right? We're doing H3, H4, H3, H4 again. So we're going back, basically showing that we don't have to, you know, go down in descending order or ascending order, right? We don't need to do that. Go in ascending order, right? But let's look that up, because let's see what the definition is, because I wanna make sure that as we are going, we are looking at these tags the right way. So the six levels of there we go there. Again, when you're using this documentation, again, not only is there the elements here, there's also attributes, right? And it's telling you right here, oh, I'm so sad, a line is obsolete, don't use it. That used to be my go-to. You could put on that element, you could put all right, I want to do something like this. I want to align center. This is old school HTML, and you could center it. Now they're saying don't use it, but you know, you'll see code where they always use it. It's a very easy way of doing that. Now they're probably going to tell you, well, rely on CSS to do that. But that was the go-to before. So right away we're saying, okay, this is being phased out. It's obsolete. Don't use it. And on each tag, you're going to have a bunch of you know, a bunch of more information there about navigation, and we won't talk. Well, accessibility, it's good to note. Accessibility is for accessibility concerns. Not everybody's going to be able to view the same site that you're on in the same way. There's going to be some people who are who have a problem, are blind, they can't see. So, or maybe, you know, they have limited vision. So there's ways that the readers will handle that type of screen reader. And there's a bunch of emulators as well, so that the site, number one, can appear larger with larger text. Number two, and this gets very complicated, but you need, there's very specific. Remember that validator we talked about? I said, you know, I don't do it all the time. It's good. You don't need to clear your warnings all the time. You need to clear your errors. However, if you were doing an accessibility project, you have to run a validator against your code, and you need to make sure all the tags, all the warnings are cleared out, because those screen readers look for elements and they read the text, right? They'll read as you navigate through, say, a registration form and tab through it. The screen reader will be reading, this is the first name, this is the second name, this is the label. Like, it'll read to this person who has accessibility issues. And yeah, it's very important actually when you're working on public facing sites such as, you know, a government site or something like that. All right. So that's some context there. So pretty straightforward button. You know what a button is. I probably put this in the forms as well, but this is how you do a button, and it's a button element, right? It's a way. I don't need to explain. Well, maybe I do need to explain the button to you if you haven't used the web too much. Just think of something that you can click with your mouse, not your finger, and you click it as pushing down. It's going to trigger something. It's going to be a user action, right? I mean, there's always the enter key, but not everybody. That's not very. Not everybody knows to hit the enter key. Like on searches, like Google, they always click the button. But not only that, we need to use buttons to trigger form submissions anywhere in the document. So as we said, we want to capture user data. We need some trigger or mechanism to trigger that, right? And as we know, whether it's on a phone or whatnot, we're used to that user action. Anywhere in the document for accessibility, standard button functionality, you know, you press it, it does something, right? So by default, HTML buttons are always present in a style resembling the platform the user agent runs on. So what that means is if you have an older school browser, you know, the button will be gray, that kind of gray style. You'll play with this, it'll just be that gray style, and each operating system has its own way of kind of representing that. But when we add CSS, we can make it all pretty. So I'm showing you a red button, but it's really a brown button. Sorry, it's a gray button, and we need to be aware of that. There's some geese in the background, so hopefully you didn't hear those. All right, let's go back here. See what I'm saying in the reference here. So I'm going to go here and say button, and I'll show you what I'm talking about. All right, the button element. Right, so if we were to, now this is a style, right? And we're not going to reveal right now what CSS does, but if we do that, the browser will automatically, that is what the browser knows is a button, right? It's just a gray button. It doesn't have much padding around it. It doesn't have much color to it. There's an attribute on it that is type. There can be a couple of type. There can be a submit button. There can also be a reset button. Submit would trigger the page to post back. To post, that's the mechanism to submit the form and refresh the page. However, with JavaScript, we don't want that. There's reasons why we don't want that, but anyhow, those are the types. And that's the default style. So if we kind of replace that back, you can see now we got this nice red beveled kind of button that has shading on it. And look, as I hover over it, it kind of toggles, right? Toggles color. That's the styling of it. So, but by default, it's very bland. It's just like that, right? So that's what a button is, but there's so much more to it than that. When you get into those global attributes, you'll see that that there's many ways to do it. So buttons may look different in different browsers and different operating systems. As you know, Windows XP will be old school button, and then iOS will probably try to make it look a little nicer because there's 10 years of difference in technology there. In rendering, right? So another one that can be kind of confusing, but very, very useful is these unordered lists. UL, unordered lists. It's an element, represents unordered lists. Kind of important if you want to quickly kind of show a list with points, bullet points. LI is the item in the list. It must be contained in the parent UL or ordered list, OL. So unordered or menus. So we start to get into, yeah, well, we started newer tags like a menu tag, and we get into things such as nav tag for navigation. Those are kind of newer tags. But menus and or list items, you'll hear that a lot. Usually display bullet points. Ordered list displays something counter on the left, such as a number or letter. Right. So ordered lists, they will have a number or letter. Unordered lists will have this this bullet point. A couple questions there. Are sliders also buttons? Sliders also buttons. So if you don't know what a slider is, I don't have one. Well, let's see. Maybe maybe they got them. So what slider? A slider could be triggered as a user button. A slider is one of those panels that you may see, and it does what it says. It slides out from the left. I don't think we have one, but you get what I'm saying, right? As we go to the left, I don't have one offhand, or do I? I don't know. Let's check. Let's go and see if I want to. Yeah, here's a slider right here, panel. Well, that's not a slider as much as, so you can imagine, right? It's like an accordion from the side. Anyhow, it's a trigger, right? So instead of this pop-up in the center here, imagine a pop-up kind of slipping in and out from the side, right? So it's a user action, but it's not necessarily a button. All right, so I want to go to a couple more slides. Let's at least get to paths and links. I know I've already been talking a little bit more than 45, have I? But we'll get to that. We'll try to be clear and start some lab work. Right, so we get this kind of representation here. Hyperlinks. So hyperlinks, these have been part of HTML from the beginning. I can 100%, 99.9% say that hyperlinks have been a part of HTML since HTML1 at least, because this is really what the whole thing was about, right? We wanted the power of the web pages, that power of the web is we can link pages and link to other pages, whether it be external or whether it be a scientific document that we need to link navigate to other pages. As we saw in that original browser, how you can navigate to different things. That was the reason. That was the whole point to it, and also sharing information. So when you click on that link on the web page, it takes you to another page called a hyperlink, or it may take you to another site, such as some external site. So not to be confused with the link tag, which we already established. The link tag goes into the header and links to assets that the browser might need to render. So we're talking about this angle bracket A close angle bracket element, which we call the anchor tag, with its href attribute. So the href attribute is its global attribute. You have to look up, because that href may only be local to this tag. Not every element may have that href. Every element will have a class tag that's global, and we'll look at that whole markup. But you need to differentiate between what tags are local to the or specific to the current tag you're looking at, or applies to everything. So with that href, it creates a hyperlink to web page, files, email addresses, location in the same page. That's really old school, or anything else the URL can address. And we need to put the content inside the link, right? When I talk about locations on the same page, that means we used to have, when you click on an element, it used to jump the page, right? That would be the old school link. You know, you're at the top and you want to read content on the bottom, you link down. We still use it sometimes, but it's not a very good user experience to have things jumping around on you. So anyhow, we look at this quickly. We have really what we're after is we have an unordered list. We have list items here, and then inside of the list items is nested. We have an anchor tag with an href that points to an external link, which is a website. And just for informational purposes, this right here is added by CSS. You're not going to get that automatically. That's really what you're going to get is just forget about these icons on the side. Just imagine blue links, right? CSS added this little images for each one of these things. So in the markup, they have some things we're not showing you right here, but so this is a mail to tag. So maybe what they're doing is you're using this extension here. They're being really smart, and they're figuring out, hey, this is a link, apply a paperclip to it. This is a mail to, so apply a letter, GIF to it, or image. And this right here is not one of these, it's a string. Therefore, it must be a telephone, or inside of it, they're looking exactly for TEL, and therefore put a phone icon there. So that magic is happening from the styles, not the browser. The browser itself will just render a very bland hyperlink, as it has since HTML1. So some more information about this inside the link. There's a href, which we already said. So it stands for reference. Hey, I even forgot that. I always think, what is href? It's reference. I don't know what the H means, but it's reference, referencing a link, a file. What if the site is built on HTML functions that eventually get depreciated? Will those sections not work? HTML tags, it's not going to not work. It's probably going to be backward compatible, but they're going to say don't use them, they're obsolete. I think it would be a very bad experience for other browsers just to say, and maybe we need to look it up. What happens eventually? It's the same thing like software when we're trying to get users off of version 1. At one point, you cut the cord. You just say it's not going to work. But that's not a good user experience for all those web pages out there that still are out there. We looked at Space Jam. That's got to be 20 years old. It still runs, but they're basically saying if you were to run it through an HTML validator, you'll get a ton of errors and a ton of warnings saying these tags are not, they're obsolete, which means they don't have global attributes. They're not accessible, as we already talked about that, and they're missing out on the newer functionality. So let's not use them, but I doubt they're going to break the site for you. Can we make it a hyperlink to different your Ethereum tokens, your blockchain tokens? I believe so. I don't have experience on that, but I know we did some linking. There's some example I remember I looked at was going to include where we did link to those tokens. So somebody correct me if I'm wrong. You guys know a lot more about tokens than I do, but I'm pretty sure we can. We'll have to look into that. That'd be cool to know. All right, so there's a space. You got to remember the space, right? If you put this together, it's not going to work. And there's no spaces. You don't want to put a space around the equal sign because of how a broken tag as well. So the website has to have the two closing. Yeah, you can easily mess this up, and this will give you problems, right? Because programming, when you get into it, it's all about the little things. So you need, if you have an opening double quote, you need to close that double quote in the same way that you need to close the anchor tag. Otherwise, you may not get a link that works. The browser is very picky, and you'll find when you're coding, one semicolon off and the whole page can be broken, right? So you need to pay attention to detail about some things like that. No spaces around or between this element here, and right, so we don't want to have spacing in there. As you go through this, you'll find how picky things can be and how small things cause big issues. And as you're learning, you'll get kind of like a like finding needle in the haystack sometimes, debugging and fixing bugs. It's really paying attention. It's the smallest thing causes the biggest problems. I can tell you, yesterday or today, I spent the whole day looking at something and spinning wheels, and ended up being data issues. So at least I know I'm not crazy. All right, let's wrap this up a little bit. Hopefully we'll get a break soon. All right, so image elements. Let's talk about these image elements, and then maybe, let's just talk about this image elements and a couple more until we hit one of those blue slides. All right, so this is another big one. Very important. Somebody sent me a question about this. So support multimedia resources such as images, audio, video, right? I'm gonna take a break after this slide. I'm actually getting tired here. I need a coffee. I've been talking for an hour. So let's just wrap this one up and we'll continue. All right, this image element embeds an image, right? So it needs this attribute called source right here. And that source is the link to the URL where your image you want to display. So it's easy to get this one mixed up. Your browser won't know where to look. This is called like a relative path, and we'll get into that. Somebody sent me an email about this today, and we'll explain a little bit about relative paths and what that means. You can easily just, what I did is I grabbed a external link, meaning a full link, an absolute path to a website that had an image, right, from Google Images, plug that in there, and then your image will work because it's pulling something that's external. Alt tag here is another attribute that browsers will need. So when you have an alt tag, if you hover over the image will actually give you this text to allow that. So it's just something the browser understands. Like you may hover over that image and it'll actually give you that alt tag. So let's just stop this here. Let me stop my pointer, exit, and let's quickly look at that, and then we will take a break after we kind of go over the lab. Just wanted to show you the alt tag, and maybe they already have it right here. Do they have it? So this one doesn't have an alt tag. This one does not. That's a link. That's a link. And all right, so let's quickly look at this in action. It doesn't work because it's not in the browser. I'll find one for you, right? So maybe Netflix has it. Can I hover over any of these things? Will it give me an alt tag? Will it give me an alt tag? No, they won't. I'll find an example for you somewhere, but we should have alt tags. There we go, right there. So you see that? So here's a book about Trump called Rage, and it says coming soon. So that's pretty cool, right? So if you hover over some of these things, back to school. So it gives you a self-explanatory thing without having to really look. All right, Mario from Lego, cool. So I know it's cool stuff for kids. So that's what that alt tag does, and the browser knows what to do about it. All right, so I've gone over a little bit. I think I'm at my almost 45 minutes. So let's quickly look at the beginning of the start of the lab. I'll just stop sharing now. I'll stop recording. I'll